Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com, full of the spoons in the back. What's going on, Double E? How are you?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Long day today and last night. A lot of hockey, which is never a bad thing. Lightning wrap up their quick back-to-back there with a overtime loss to the Washington Capitals last night. First off, do we have any update on Max Crozier? I know other than, we know he's probably going to miss the next game.
Yeah, no update. The team actually flew home yesterday. They got 2 more road games this weekend, Friday and Saturday, but they came home. They'll practice here in town, then head back out tomorrow afternoon. But I could tell you, if anybody read what I had, somebody sent me the video of, he took an awkward fall at center ice, and it looked like the toe of his skate hit a rut or something, and the ankle turned in a way that the ankle is not supposed to turn. So I'd be surprised if we see Crozier anytime soon. That's just me speculating and looking at what happened. But those are not good situations, and usually they mean a little bit of missed time. So I would not expect to see Crozier anytime soon.
So is it just as simple as Darren Radish will fill in for him?
I mean, that makes the most sense, right? Radish has been the guy out the past 2 games since J.J. Moser returned, and he's a right-handed shot. So yeah, it makes sense that the simple thing to do is to just bring Radish in and let him go. I mean, have other options though, right? Like you can move J.J. Moser back to the left side, and if you have any interest in bringing anybody up from Syracuse, but they've only played 2 games into their season, so my guess is they just plug Radish right in.
Yeah. And then, when you look at this team defensively and, the games last night, it comes down to just simple mental miscues. When you look at losing guys, Hedman lose the guy on the side of the net. He doesn't get the puck out for the second goal. And then Cirelli just gets caught puck watching on the goal by Chychrun. Is that less concerning or more concerning knowing who made the mistakes and, the ability that they have to clean it up?
Well, you're concerned in the sense of the guys who are making those mistakes, right? I mean,
right.
Victor Hedman knows better, right? You have a 1-goal lead in the third period,
right.
Killing a penalty. Your first thing has to be get the puck out.
Right.
It's, it's always easy to look, from 200 feet above or watch on TV, and the decision making that has to go into these plays. It's a split second decision, and he sees Jake Gensel potentially going up the ice for a breakaway, right? If he can get that puck out, Gensel's got a breakaway. So I get the thought process, but it's not the right thought process, right? If you're trying to get it to Gensel, bank it off the boards. Put it into an area where there's no risk of the puck getting turned over, right? Because your first order has to be get the puck out. Your second order has to be, okay, if I can make a play, I'll make a play. But clearing the puck out is priority number 1 in those situations when you're protecting a lead in the first period. And then on the game-winning goal, it's man-to-man defense in overtime. It's 3-on-3, and you have to know where your man is. And, Cirelli's not in a bad place, but he's not in the right place, right? Like, he can disrupt that pass. If he can get a stick on that pass, then he has an ability to stop the play. They can finally get possession, and maybe they can go the other way or at least get a change in that. But it's the awareness level. It's the head checks, right? Like I bring this up to Chief all the time. One of the reasons Leo Messi is so great on the pitch, watch his head. It is in constant motion, looking around at everything that's going on. It's a little different. Obviously, soccer is a lot slower paced game than hockey, but it's just awareness and knowing where the danger could be coming from, because usually the most dangerous player on the ice is the one without the puck, right? Because everybody sees the puck, and Tom Wilson is not scoring a goal from that side of the ice where he's at. You got to know what's going on behind you. So, and again, that's a guy that we're not used to saying he made a bad defensive read, and he made a bad defensive read in that situation and ends up, costing him the opportunity to get a second point. We don't know how things would have went in overtime, but you took that opportunity away because you just weren't aware of what was going on around you. And, you lose the opening faceoff on overtime and you never touch the puck.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. Sounds like something that we've seen the last couple of years. I look at, the play of Nikita Kucherov and, a couple of goals in the opener, but he's really struggled in the games, after that. it seems like they got a little bit of an injection of energy with Hagel on that line, but at times they just get too pass happy and they're not shooting the puck at the net. I wonder what you think about Nikita Kucherov as far as like how his game is going to age, because he's not a guy that's going to, when he's defensive, I would say it's more by guile and more by being slick, lifting the puck off. You know what I mean? Like, it's not because he's in there grinding and he's going to hit a bunch of people. Like, I'm curious how you think his game is going to age, because when he loses a step, because we all end up losing a step, does he end up trying to force those passes too much? And we saw it in the game. What was the game against New Jersey, right? Where, the pass back and it's like it leads to the breakaway and they score, and that just took the wind out of the sails. And we know he's a guy that wears his emotions on his sleeve. And I just wonder how that is going to go these next couple of years, and if he can continue to play at a high level. But what happens if he doesn't?
Well, to me, the thing about Nikita's game is it's his brain, right? And because he doesn't, like you said, he doesn't rely on being the guy to go dig in the corners. He's not a guy who's relying on the pace of his play, because he slows the game down in other ways where he's not skating. So as long as the brain is still functioning at a high level, then Nikita Kucherov will still be effective. I mean, what is he, 31 years old, 32? Like, he's not. It's like we're sometimes I think we're caught in between this being a young man's game and saying 30-year-olds are too old to play the game, right? In 33, 34. I mean, every individual is different, and you can't paint, a broad stroke with individual players based on their age. It's based on how they play. And with Nikita, like, we know all the work he puts in the summer. Basically it starts 2 weeks after the end of the regular season or the end of the playoffs when he starts to get back on the ice and work on things. So for me, the way he processes the game, as long as that continues to be at his elite level, he will continue to be an effective player. I think just what we're seeing here in the early stages of the season is just bad habits, right? He knows, like, how many passes he sent across the top of the zone. Right. And, just get picked off. Now, the one against Jersey was a lazy pass. It was a backhander. He was trying to get it to Radish, and it's too slow of a pass. It's not anything other than that, at a bad area of the ice, right? And that's just where he has to get himself out of those habits, which he can get into. I mean, he's been benched for it before. It's been a couple of years, but he's been benched for it before by John Cooper. So he just has to get those out of his mind, and just I think a lot of what we've seen here through 4 games is just decision-making not being the right decisions. And that, to me, is just creating habits.
This team has just been absolutely horrible when it comes to face-offs. It was better last night than it was in the previous game. But, you and I spoke about the reason why Jack Finley was on this roster. And, he's out there for that 3-on-5 in the preseason. We saw how many face-offs he was winning. Surprised that he has been scratched as much as he has early on this season, knowing that one of the things that he really does well is something that they're suffering with.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't know yet that he does it well. We've seen samples of it, right? In the preseason, he's not facing Nico Hischier, right? He's not facing Elias Lindholm on a regular basis. So, we don't know. We think he can be good at it. But until you get out there and have those opportunities, we don't know the answer to that question yet. But I think with Curtis Douglas coming in and being acquired on waivers, like you kind of know who Jack Finley is as a player right now. You need to find out who Curtis Douglas is. You need to make a decision, because Nick Paul's coming back, and there are roster decisions that are going to have to be made when Nick Paul is ready. He's still at least a couple of weeks away, and we'll see what the Crozier injury does if they put him on IR or anything like that. But with Douglas, you got to find out if he can play. And, you look at opening night, against McDermott, big, heavy guy. Douglas got his fight and kind of introduced himself. McDermott gave him that. The game against Jersey, there wasn't one of those guys in the lineup. So Finley gets in, but then Boston had Tanner Jeannot and Nikita Zadorov. And then last night you had Tom Wilson. So, I think some of that plays into the roster and who's in the game. But I also think a lot of it comes down to, you need to find out, can Curtis Douglas play at the NHL level? Can he be somebody that you can put out there in situations that are more than just for fighting? I mean, that's obviously a big part of who he is and in his identity as a player. So I think that's just the early season process to try and find out who Douglas is, because I think like Finley's not going anywhere. Right? I've already seen people say, why is he not playing? They need to send him down to Syracuse. Well, let me tell you, if Jack Finley goes on waivers, you lose him. He's a 6'6" right-hand shot centerman. He's not making it through waivers. So he's not going anywhere anytime soon. So you can just, take that thought out of your head if you're on board with that situation. But he'll get in the lineup. I would imagine he plays on Friday in Detroit. Detroit doesn't have any of those kind of guys on their lineup and their roster that you would want a Curtis Douglas. And so I would think that we'll see Finley Friday for sure.
Yeah, I just, I feel like we get to a point. I think we had this conversation last year too. Like, we're so ingrained into the Tampa Bay Lightning being a successful organization and how well that they've, done the last, decade, 15 years or whatever. But I feel like there's some things where we maybe need to take a step back and like think maybe they're not making the right decision. You know what I mean? Not to be like pessimistic, but it's just like, I understand what you're saying. But if you have guys on the roster purely for that, we've talked about how there's like no spot for goons anymore. So like,
right,
you're going to bring in a guy like this. Like, the reason why the Lightning were good in 20 and 21 is because like Pat Maroon was on your team. Like, he played regardless of who the opponent was. So if you have guys like, and I understand the versatility aspect of it, but I just feel like, what if you're doing Jack Finley's career a disservice by trying to find out with a fourth line guy that you picked up off of waivers off of Utah? You know what I mean? Like, why do you need that game time to tell you what Curtis Douglas is all about? Like, nothing that I've seen. He's a guy, you saw it last night. Like, I don't know if he's going to give you much offensively, right? We know that he can scrap. We know that he's a big guy. Like, do we really need to see that in game situations during the regular season where you talk about so much about munching points early on? And yes, we don't know if he's going to be good against Lindholm or Recher, but shit, man, you put him in. Like, you and I both thought that the way that they were deploying Jack Finley in the preseason was almost a precursor of how they were going to use him, at least to a some degree, right, in the regular season. And now you're telling me that you're scratching him for all but one game? Like, that can't be good. And I know guys have to be resilient. They're professional athletes, but I don't know, man. There's just something about this where I just like, it kills me to see Connor Geekie on the fourth line. He's out there. He's shooting the puck. He's got more top end ability than most of the guys I think up front. And he's out there playing on the fourth line. And I understand he's a young kid. You want to go. At sometimes I feel like we got to start thinking outside the box a little bit more. When Coop does it and he mixes his lines up, we're like, oh, wow, that's a great idea. I don't know, man. I'm just kind of caught in between the whole thing of not just blindly trusting everything that the Tampa Bay Lightning do, but also understanding that there is a process to this entire thing.
Well, that's the word right there, process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's an 82-game season, soon to be 84-game season, but it's an 82-game season. And you have to find out some early season answers, right? And Nick Paul's injury has allowed you the opportunity to kind of experiment, for lack of a better word, with some things. And one of those is Curtis Douglas. Like, you have to find out maybe he can be Pat Maroon. But like, until you see him in some games, you don't have that answer. And let's face it, the clock is ticking on trying to have to make that decision. That doesn't mean Jack Finley's not going to be a regular for the entire rest of the season. We're only 4 games in, and I know he's only played one of them. But like, if you bring in a guy who, like, let's face it, in today's game, fighting is not as prevalent, but it still factors, and intimidation is a factor. And when you have a guy like Douglas on your bench, it makes everybody a little bit taller, in John Cooper's words. He's used that many times through the past. Everybody's a little bit couple inches taller on the bench.
He said that about Tanner Jeannot, right? I mean, you said that about Tanner. But my point, Ian, I get exactly what you're saying is, right? But like, at the end of the day, the last 3-4 postseasons, you lost in the first round. So like, shouldn't there be a different way to look at? That's what I'm saying. Like, I know, because
isn't this a different way to look at it? Because it hasn't worked, because you didn't have that guy. Look, what's the one criticism that so many people had about that series against the Panthers? Well, you got run over. So what are they doing? They're reacting not to fans, but they see that too. So they're trying to put themselves into the situation. Can this guy be somebody that can play and be an intimidating factor on our bench, on our ice, so that if somebody goes out and clocks Brandon Hagel, you have somebody that can answer it, or at least maybe even curb that thought. Right? That's what this is all about. And that's what I'm saying. It's too early to start thinking, well, this is how things are going to be the entire season. Things always change throughout the course of a season. But if you're going to, because they don't have anybody in their system that can be that intimidator, right? Mm-hmm. That's why they brought in Scott Sabrin, right? In case they need that during the regular season, they could bring him up. Now, we all saw what happened in the preseason with the Panthers. But they are trying to find out if this can be a guy who just gives everybody else a little bit more freedom on the ice. Because to your point, Pat Maroon could play when he was here. Luke Schenn could play when he was here. So now you have to find out, can Curtis Douglas be a guy who can play? And you have to make that decision sooner rather than later. And the only way to make that decision fairly to him and to your team is to get him in the lineup and see how he can perform. Right? Because, if Paul comes back in 2 weeks, you've only got 2 players right now on this roster that do not require waivers. Now, Phoenix Copley comes into this, and, we'll see how long they sit with 3 goaltenders. But, the only 2 guys who do not require waivers to go down are Connor Geekie and Max Crozier, and now Crozier's hurt. Right? So now you really only have 1 guy to open up a roster spot if you need it, because they're carrying 23. And that guy is Connor Geekie. So you have to make this decision. You have to find out if Douglas is there. So, we overreact in hockey so fast, right? Mm-hmm. Like we overreact to an 0-2 start when there's still 80 games left in the season. We overreact to a 2-0 start when there's still 80 games left in the season, right? So there is a process that you kind of have to go through. As we say, you don't really find out who your team is usually until beginning of November to Thanksgiving. That's kind of the time frame where you really figure out who your team is, what your team is, and what you feel you might need to address any situations. And, Finley will get his opportunities. This is not an indictment against Jack Finley in any way. This is, we need to find out if Curtis Douglas can play this game and do more than just fight.
Yeah, I guess my big thing, brother, is just like they tried this a couple of years ago with Tanner Jeannot, and they spend all this stuff, and it's like, you bring in a guy just for that, and you spend all these draft picks, he goes out there and really doesn't do much, and you thought you were going to get more offensively from him. I get that, but
look how much Tanner Jeannot has been in demand since. The Bruins saw he signed a $3 million contract with the Bruins.
Yeah, but I mean are they going to be a good? Are they going to
probably not?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But
he's still a player that's in demand.
I know, I get it, E, but I think that may be the wrong way to go about it, because
I don't disagree with you.
Because the 2020-2021 Lightning, because all we can use is the teams that won it all, right? Because at the end of the day, you need to compare yourself to the champions. This team has championship pedigree. It's not about making the playoffs. Like, nobody wants to see the Lightning just make the playoffs. They want to see them win a cup. They set the bar that high, not us. They did. And in those years, we didn't say, well, they lacked toughness. The whole team was tough, right? The third line was the grinders. Yanni Gourde was considered one of the guys that was a scrapper, and Goodrow and Coleman. We remember Acemont fighting Braden Point. Remember Cirelli getting in scraps. So I feel like when you're depending on one player to set that tone, I think you're already lost. Because it has to be an entire mindset. Because if it's the Florida Panthers don't go, let's bring in a tough guy. No, they got Bennett does it, Kachuk does it, Ekblad does it, this guy does it, that guy does it. I mean, if it doesn't permeate throughout your entire team, I think you're in trouble trying to try out a guy in your fourth line, thinking that that's going to be the end all be all. Whether you're going to
don't know the answer
on the bench or not.
I know that's why you have to find out.
But you already
have
did
to
it with
find out the answer.
But the answers that we're asking for John Cooper, we already had those, because what you just said about sitting taller on the bench is exactly what he said about Tanner Jeannot. And fine, you stood up taller on the bench. You know what that got you? A first round exit, right? So I mean, it's more than just, all right, standing up taller on the bench and having more confidence. It can't just be one guy. It's got to be an entire mindset for your team.
But but a player like that can set that tone. Pat Maroon set that tone, right? They kind of took on his attitude. Now, we know Pat's a pretty good talker and a trash talker, especially on the ice. So guys were kind of behind that a little bit in terms of the way they played. And you're right, because when you see Carter Verhaeghe delivering dirty hits, he's kind of bought into the Florida Panthers, but look, I mean, JJ Moser has brought a different grit to his game, starting in preseason and here, like he's led the team in ice his first 2 games back on back-to-back nights. He's led the team in ice time, and both because he's brought a grittier game, right? But like, you don't want Brandon Hagel being that guy. He'll do it. He's not the biggest guy. You don't want him doing it. You really don't even want Anthony Cirelli doing it. Like, he can do it, but you don't want him doing it, right? So it can permeate with one guy. It can be a, and like when Coop says 2 inches taller on the bench, it gives you the confidence to go out and be that kind of a player too, if and when the situations arise, right? And that's what that preseason 2 games against the Panthers were about. Even the game against Ottawa to start, and we saw the fight between Douglas and
McDermott. Yeah,
McDermott. Lilleberg got into a fight. There were a lot of scuffles. Jack Finley taking that roughing penalty against the Devils. Again, I think that they will take that penalty all day long because it sets that tone. So Douglas is just the guy who's kind of the police, if you will, in those situations, to say, hey, if you go after our guy, I'm coming after your guy. That's what it's all about in that terms. But to your point, and I've said this many times as well, you can't just be that guy. You have to bring more to the ice. And that's what I'm saying. You don't know if Douglas can bring that to the ice beyond what he's here for. And you have to have those answers before you can make decisions moving forward.
Double E, I know you got to roll. I got to ask you one quick question about Andrei Vasilevskiy. There's people that are worried. He's 0-3 so far this season. How much blame do you put on the shoulders of Andrei Vasilevskiy for him being 0-3 to start this 2025-26 season?
I thought he was great last night.
Any concerns about him at all?
Not from what I've seen. I mean, the fact that Copley is still here kind of gives you an idea that the Lightning are still trying to feel their way through this with all the time he missed. In terms of his play on the ice, I think he's been pretty sharp. I don't know if he's been as quick post to post as we're used to seeing from him. Like I said, he got fooled a little bit on the first goal last night. He tracked the puck behind the net, and sometimes that happens with goalies. But I thought he was great. I mean, the stop he made on Chychrun right at about a minute to go in regulation last night was a fantastic save. He made a couple of really good stops in the game against Ottawa to allow them to keep that game tied. I thought he was really good against New Jersey for the most part. I mean, I can't sit here and sit back and look at any goal that's scored against him and say, that's a bad goal, right? I haven't seen any of those yet. I'm trying to think back. There was a deflection in there somewhere. While the one against New Jersey that went off of Crozier's skate, right? Like, you can't
screen tip and off of Crozier.
Yeah. So no, and it's just, again, a 3-game sample size from a guy who didn't play hardly anything in the preseason, and really the 40 minutes he got in preseason were in a joke of a game, down there in Sunrise. So he didn't get the real feel for the game. I haven't seen anything that makes me think he's dropped. His level has dropped. We don't know what was bothering him or what he needed to be managed during training camp, but I haven't seen anything yet to this point that tells me that there should be concern with him. But again, we'll have to monitor it, keep going forward here.
E, what do you got up on lightninginsider.com right now, buddy?
Hey, from last night, I've kind of started this theme of picking out some musical artists. I'm a big music guy, as you know, and kind of integrating that into some of the recaps. So, Train was last night, Billy Joel was Monday, Olivia Newton-John was last weekend. So I'm trying to just be a little bit more creative in how I do this and integrating themes amongst the game recap. So that's what's up there right now. Again, the team is back in practice tomorrow before they head out for the final 2 games of the road trip. And just to give everybody heads up, I will not be around on Saturday. I'll be around on Friday, but I will not be around on Saturday. My oldest son, for some reason, picked an October Saturday to get married. So he's getting married in Orlando. So I will not be around for Saturday's game, but I'll be around for Friday.
Well, congratulations, man. That's really awesome. It's going to be weird not seeing you in the press box there, but totally understand, if you're going to miss a game, that's a pretty good reason to do so. lightninginsider.com. Use that promo code J and Z, get $10 off, not just this year, but every recurring season after that. Follow him on Twitter /X, Erik_Erlendsson. That's a K, not a C, 2 S's after the D. Erik, appreciate it, my friend. I will we'll talk to you next week. Thanks, buddy.
All right, sounds good, and thanks for accommodating me today.
You got it, buddy. Anytime. The one and only